We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Thursday night, August 22nd, 2024, as we record this new episode. Don't break up the Chicago White Sox, but they have won 3 of their last 9 games. Okay, joking aside, coming off a 21-game losing streak, a team going 3-6 in their last 3 series is an improvement. The White Sox lost 2 out of 3 against the Giants this week. They let Kyle Harrison, the starting pitcher for the Giants, off the hook in game 1 as they performed horribly with runners in scoring position. But in game 3, tied in the 9th inning 2-2, the White Sox explode for 4 runs. The White Sox are the ones blowing it up in the 9th inning instead of getting blown out in the 9th inning. The White Sox are now 31-97 as they come home to a 10-game homestand starting this weekend against Detroit. Can interim manager Grady Sizemore help this squad avoid setting the worst record in MLB history? We'll discuss that. Also, another historical low this White Sox team is on pace for. Preview that upcoming Tigers series and quickly take a look around Major League Baseball as the Seattle Mariners make a managerial change. Joining me in this episode are Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margulis. And gentlemen, hello. The White Sox lost 2 out of 3 again, Jim, but that's 3 straight series where they didn't get swept. So progress, dare I say the squad is playing better baseball as of late?
They're playing, I think, technically the kind of baseball I thought they'd be playing entering the season, because I predicted them to go 54-108, and they're winning 1 out of 3 games. So that technically is exactly 333 baseball and the brand of baseball I envisioned all along. But no, it's been mostly good, or at least, better. Sounder. Still not great. The offense is still a problem. But the bullpen held together against Houston and San Francisco better than I thought, because during the Yankee series, after 2 games of holding them to pretty surprising runners in scoring position success, all of a sudden, like, the floodgates opened in game 3, they lost. And it's like, okay, there is regression to the mean for the Yankees, regression to the mean for the White Sox, finally meeting in like a really ugly ending to that series. So I kept expecting, along the same lines, to see a similar reckoning over the course of the Houston and San Francisco series. And largely there wasn't. Like, there were some choices that Sizemore made in terms of, which pitchers to use, whether to kind of punt or, just concentrate on using the fewest pitchers possible versus, trying to leverage every inning to be scoreless. And I thought he chose pretty wisely in that regard. So it's more palatable. There was a long way to go, I think, to be more palatable and still be bad. So I think they're in that sweet spot now of just being ordinary, but also still, like, if they were playing this way the whole season, we'd still be talking about a team that would challenge for the franchise record of losses rather than look dead set on making history with weeks to spare.
I guess one thing that caught my attention is it seems like the bullpen is pitching better as of late, James. And I'm shockingly confident now when Justin Anderson and Chad Kuhl are entering the game for the White Sox. Have the White Sox found a couple of guys that they can at least try out in the bullpen going to 2025 with Anderson and Kuhl?
I guess so. I think this entire opening segment has been very like, man, we're pretty hard up. Has been my general interpretation. Kuhl certainly had good moments. Justin Anderson's been, consistently like major league caliber through the season. Frazier Elliott had a really nice inning. Certainly everything they did in the finale of the Giants series was like, oh, that would be interesting if they could do that ever again. But I wouldn't say I'm confident when the bullpen comes in or is handed their standard like 1-run lead at any point. They're still, especially for generally, you always want to be able to produce like viable relievers in AAA. I think they've been disconcertingly unable to find anybody who really catch fire out of their bullpen in the upper minors throughout the season. You're starting to see a little of that trickle up to Charlotte with, Hoopy Tuinatoa getting promoted and, Trey Mago, not Scott Mago, though they are related.
Really?
That was for all, I don't know what questions you had for Trey Mago, but that was one of my central ones. And he said that they were distant cousins and they met when they were children at some family reunion. So yeah.
That's cool.
The proud Mago legacy of situational relievers that they produced is really something to behold. Definitely more interesting than any weird employment traditions the Fegans have going. But yeah, I think it's still pretty shallow. I think it's still pretty not a bullpen with traditional leverage types or even traditional like guys who've been good in AAA getting a shot up here. Like, especially now with like his discomfort not subsiding, really not a ton of certainly some uncertainty that Jordan Leisure like comes back at all this year. I don't know if we really got the typical bad season. Hey, a couple nice reliever stories that 2018 had. Like I remember writing 3 features about Chase Fry. How many pitches he threw out of the bullpen back that year. As much as I thought those were dark times to write that much about Chase Fry, like they don't even have somebody whose like peripherals look that sexy out of the pen this year. So I think I think we've been forcing it a lot with like as much as like, I think the players are audibly like relieved and on a different tone that the firing that they knew was going to happen has happened. And, the few that just were kind of sick of Grifol or sick of kind of pretending that there were any like good results coming from like literally the least successful managerial team in franchise history. I think there's some exhale from that and kind of knowing what the plan's going to be for the rest of the season. But the general vibe of like, they're playing hard under Grady. Like, they tried. They had some play hard nights under Grifol too. It's just like, there's still not the precision. There's still a lot of Lenny Sosa defensive moments. They're still they haven't. This was like a team that we thought was going to be garden variety awful because they're supposed to have like a top 10 defense going into the season. We're not seeing anything like that all of a sudden overnight. So I still think mostly dark times where I'm dreading like covering the final 2 weeks of the season where they're breaking an all-time record and there's a lot of TV cameras present and edgy interviews from normally nice people being ahead. My faith has not been boosted by the last 2 weeks that much.
Well, 2 counterpoints. One would be Dominic Fletcher might be one of those examples of defense suddenly improving from worst to best, at least in one position. That kind of helps. The other one, when it comes like the shape of the bullpen or like how the bullpen feels, I kind of have a theory that I've been operating under without saying anything. So I'll say it now because it probably would be dumb to put it in writing and immediately blow up in my face. It's a lot more ephemeral. We're just talking about a conversation and spitballing, but I think like the presence or lack thereof of Steven Wilson kind of helps the bullpen feel better because there's been like a gap between how much Grifol especially trusted him versus like how much his performance suggested that he's broken or off or hurts or just, came to the season weird and just hasn't been able to shake it. Cause I was looking at his like last 3 months or like, that's not really 3 months of baseball, but 19 games since June coming back, 9.19 ERA. You have 33 base runners over 15 2/3 innings, 12 walks to 15 strikeouts, an OPS over 1,000. Basically every possible peripheral he could find that says Wilson has just been awful has been there. And seeing him come in when the White Sox were like down 2 or down 3 and, you know, trying to keep it in it, like I always had that kind of back of mind, like, what has he done lately? And yeah, I look it up and every time I keep expecting better, like the game log is like, no, he's been as bad as you thought. It's like, you have this feeling for a reason. So the fact that he's out of the mix now makes me wonder if just, you know, it's and Sizemore too being there and maybe having a different set of eyes on him is more putting either better relievers or relievers who are in better shape in these spots to where like they aren't fighting themselves as much as Wilson might have been.
Yeah, I mean, Steven had spoken. It progressed oddly, but like he was kind of sounding the alarm that he was messed up mechanically from like what he had tried to install in the offseason because he's trying to like change his arsenal and throw a splitter when he's like kind of a sweeper guy. But the surface level results were kind of okay starting out. And it was when the White Sox started to kind of respond like, hey, this isn't right. And when they optioned him like around the All-Star break, when he was saying like, I think I'm coming out of it. And then the actual results really went to the tank. And then the White Sox, you know, now he's going on the IL again for a back issue, which he had said it was a one-off. He slipped on the mound in New York, but maybe it's kind of reoccurring a little bit on him. Now the second half and everything has gone as kind of matching the general thing of like, this guy, his mechanics are kind of screwed up from some stuff he tried to do in the offseason. Then he got hurt, and now it's kind of a lost year for him. But generally, you know, I feel like this is true of bad teams often is when they're almost better when they bail on the established veteran option that's not working, but they're going to just keep giving him rope to see if it snaps back to when they just go like, all right, who's performing the best in AAA, give him a shot. Even when it's like the ceiling's lower and it's basically replacement level talent, it's better when they kind of switch to meritocracy in the second half as opposed to like still going at plan A, which is clearly not working, but we're not acknowledging it yet. So some of that seems to have happened in the bullpen a bit, though some of it is obviously just forced on trading Michael Kopech, and you need to figure out a new leverage ladder now.
Gus Varland really seems like the creative player. They're really dipping into that level of just, you know, who's automatically generated to fill in a depth chart because you ignored 4 open roster spots and the computer simulation needs to keep going. So here's Gus Varland.
Well, like, because he's actually Louis Varland's brother, but it sounds like when you're just playing career mode for so long that it starts recycling player names.
Yep.
Since now there's another Varland from Minnesota. It's like, okay.
But not like Javier Varland or something like that. That's my favorite is when they mix nationalities.
Jerks and Varland.
This shocked me. So I mentioned Justin Anderson. Justin Anderson, in his last 9 appearances in the month of August, spanning 9 2/3 innings, has allowed 1 hit. Just 1 hit. Only 1 earned run. Walks have been an issue. He's walked 5, but he has 10 strikeouts. So for this month, Justin Anderson has a 0.93 ERA in the month of August. And another thing that pops out to me, so Anderson throws a lot more sliders than 4-seam fastballs. He's throwing the slider about 46% of the time, and his 4-seamer about 31% of the time. Opposing batters are hitting just 120 against Anderson's 4-seam fastball and slugging just 220 against the pitch. So I get what you are saying, James, that when you are watching the worst team maybe in MLB history, that we could be just paying way too much attention to guys that have no prayer of ever being on a league average team. But looking at Anderson's baseball savant data, and I recommend everyone to do so, shockingly, and I have no idea when this happened, it must have happened in the month of August, but like average exit velocity allowed, he is in the top 3% of MLB, in which opposing hitters only have an average exit velocity of 85 and a half miles an hour against him. And there's just a lot of red, which is what you want to see for pitchers. And his run value for all of his pitches are league average or better. So maybe out of a fluky thing, this 31-year-old journeyman in Major League Baseball, maybe the White Sox have something at Justin Anderson. Now watch, he has a 15 ERA the rest of the season, and James was just totally right. but that is something that has surprised me.
I'm not trying to bag on Justin Anderson. He's been fine. I just
he's been better than fine. Did you just not hear me? I'm kidding.
Like in some, I've like watched them all season. It's like a 4.28 ERA out of the bullpen. Like it's had some highs, it's had some lows. Like I'm more viewing it like when I was watching him throw a bullpen in February and a Sox official like walk up to me like he's gonna be thinking he might play a substantial part in their bullpen. Do they mean like they thought he'd make the team, or do they mean like just you watch late August? He's gonna be coming around, buddy. I see the nicest 6 months from now.
It's like the They Might Be Giants line, the nicest of the damned.
I'm expecting a 1,000-word feature about the progress of Justin Anderson.
I definitely am going to talk to him. He throws legit stuff, and it's interesting that they pulled him off, after years of injuries, and obviously worked with Cats with the Angels. I mean, it's probably anytime you see somebody who like pitched with the Angels like 6 years ago get a non-roster invite, as long as Ethan's Cats is here, you should probably suspect that's what's at play. But yeah, he's been interesting. I don't know if they might as well use him to close the game at some point down the stretch if they have the opportunity. Like the options that are more qualified are basically like John Brebbia based on name and experience value, or Chad Kuhl.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought like years before this, like mostly like on watching his fastball get hit hard, like Chad Kuhl should work in leverage and just throw 60% sliders to right-handers. And there was a lot of long relief. There's a lot of 100 pitch outings out of Chad Kuhl out of the bullpen, but yeah, him as a leverage guy facing right-handers looks pretty interesting. They got Jose Altuve to swing at pretty bad pitches. So if that's the plan, that's something to watch down the stretch. And I assume all these guys can kind of be retained if they want to. Certainly Anderson with his control, and I haven't even looked up Kuhl, but I imagine he's in a similar boat. No, over 6 years of service time. Dag nabbit, but I bet they could sweet talk him into sticking around.
He'll get the Reynaldo Lopez contract. While we turn this into a Justin appreciation pod, two things that jump out to me, or at least one thing that happened twice over. The White Sox have won 3 of his last 5 appearances. And that's actually the second time that's happened. There's earlier 4 out of 6, which, when you look at every single White Sox pitcher, like, their record of games they've appeared in, I imagine it's pretty hard to find that stretch for many other pitchers. Maybe Kopech is one because like he mostly came in when they had a chance to win. Whether he helped them get there is a different matter, but at least, there is that possibility. But otherwise, for like a medium leverage to high leverage reliever, like that's probably pretty rare for the White Sox the last few months.
Poor Chris Flexen just staring daggers into this guy's head.
See, I think what Flexen needs to do is pitch well enough so Justin Anderson enters the game to help him out with that streak. Now, I just think, again, the offense is an issue, and we'll be highlighting that in a moment. The defense has been better. The bullpen has been pitching better. I think when you look at the optics and when you're watching these games like we are, and in the last 9 games, it's like, hey, the White Sox are playing better baseball. That's what I'm pointing out is unlike the 21-game losing streak where the bullpen was just a complete dumpster fire and they would take a 2-2 game late and make it 10-2. That hasn't been the case as of late, and the White Sox are finding a way. Again, they're on a hot streak. They have won 3 of their last 9 games.
We're talking about 3 straight series losses. I said this to a person the other day. Like the next year's team is going to win like 65 games, and it's going to feel like watching like a 2014 Dodgers team. Like, oh my God, like they have a chance to win. They have a chance to win almost every series. Like,
be nice.
It's going to feel like a breakthrough.
Never going to complain about an 81-81 season again.
That's how
it's like the first 38-degree day of February. Let's put on some shorts and t-shirt and go for a run.
It sure is.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
So the White Sox, even though they are playing better baseball as of late, they're still on pace to finish 39 and 123. They have a 242 winning percentage. And under Grady Sizemore, the White Sox are 3-8. That's a 272 winning percentage. However, the White Sox, again, still comfortably on pace to lose more than 120 games this season. They may have a chance to lose 125 games is what we're going to be paying attention to now. Ever since that Sizemore has been hired, people have been raving about the post-game interviews and the quotes that he's given, and the players seem to like Sizemore, which now we're starting to see some of those articles coming out about how Grady Sizemore could surprise the White Sox front office and get serious consideration to be the White Sox manager in 2025. So, James, let me ask you, as part of the media pool, despite what Chris Getz said about the job and after firing Pedro Grifol, is Grady Sizemore a serious contender for the managerial opening next season?
I mean, you said surprise the front office. I suppose that would definitely qualify. Yeah, like in the sense that he's there, he's well liked. He seems interested in doing it, and this is an organization that has eschewed doing real searches on multiple occasions. And the person who's been kind of had the final call in issuing those searches still has the final call. But I think Chris Getz staked out his position for a reason. I think as a GM, especially a White Sox GM, the opportunity to hold your manager search, to hear takes about your organization from other teams, is pretty sacred. It's something even Rick Hahn kind of spoke about how sacred it was. And certainly as a first-time GM, I think it's a unique opportunity for him. He's talked about having a list of candidates he would want to talk to. I imagine that's still the case. Far crazier decisions have been made in this organization's history than bringing on an interim manager who's pretty well liked and is kind of a name and would be a get theoretically down the road when he has more experience. So definitely would never dismiss it, but I would still stick to the idea that they're trying to be a real boy. They're trying to interview managers. They're trying to actually conduct this like a good regime that builds people's confidence in them would.
Jim, does this White Sox team get to 40-plus wins with Sizemore as the interim manager? Like I mentioned, they are 3-8 under Grady Sizemore. That is a higher winning percentage than their current season winning percentage.
I'm inclined to think no, just because they haven't ever really showed the ability to do it. Like once they did, or like the one point where they looked decent, like the players who helped them get there, like a lot of them are gone. Like they've traded away their major league talent. And when you look at like who might be coming up, like Edgar Caro has the back issue. Like we'll see if that takes him out of September consideration. But when it comes to like players who might have more of an impact in September, like it's hard to see any prospects coming up who might do that. There could be, just, seeing Kai Bush and come up and survive, so far with his probably worst control he showed all year, like Nick Nastrini, if they have like interesting bullpen ideas for him, like you could see some different permutations of pitchers that could help him to be decent, even if they don't have like the lack of, or they don't have like that starter coming up who might have like the Michael Kopech excitement when he came up and joined the White Sox 26-man roster. So like, I can see some improvement here, but I don't see any huge changes that make them feel any different, that really change the complexion of the team. You still see like probably Dominic Fletcher getting too many at-bats against left-handed pitching because like it's worth their while to explore that same thing. And like they feel like that's the case with Gavin Sheets as well. Defense probably isn't going to be better unless like there are more Fletcher stories coming along. So I'm thinking they'll come up short of the 40 wins. I think the one thing the one point I'm looking on the calendar is like the 2 Anaheim series. Like you have 6 games against the Angels. They're equally a mess. Well, maybe not equally, but they're a classic Angels mess right now. And they just, I guess, adding the controversy, they re-upped with their GM, Perry Manasian. So like they are continuing to stay the course. There's no maybe rebound or kind of surge of energy the way the White Sox did when they fired Pedro Grifol. So they could be like a team that spots the White Sox a series win or two, and maybe that's all it needs to get to 40 plus wins and avoid the worst history rather than just like lesser forms of worst ever, more isolated forms, limited forms of worst ever. So that's maybe the one thing that gives me pause, but I guess right now from how it looks, I'll say they end up with 39 or fewer.
This is an ad by BetterHelp. What are your self-care non-negotiables? The things make you feel better even when it's impossible to make time for them. Like that workout you try to squeeze in between kids' activities, work, and everything else you have going on, and before you know it, it gets pushed to tomorrow. Sound familiar? But it's the moments when you feel like you have no time for yourself when those non-negotiables are more important than ever. Those are the things that keep you strong, healthy, motivated, and prepared to take on everything life demands of you. So why not make therapy one of them? BetterHelp Online Therapy makes it easy to get started with affordable phone, video, or live chat sessions you can do from anywhere, and the option to message your therapist between sessions if anything comes up. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com.
Well, if the White Sox don't win 40 games, they do set the worst record ever in MLB history. It's going to be because of the White Sox offense. Now, if you recall a few podcasts ago, James and I had this conversation about we're watching the worst White Sox offense ever. And I took a deep dive into just how bad this offense is. Remember, the designated hitter rule was implemented for the 1973 season. So take that into that lens. Prior to then, White Sox had pitchers just like everybody else in Major League Baseball hit for themselves. So far, the White Sox have scored 398 runs in 128 games. They're averaging 3.11 runs per game. So the fewest runs scored in a season with more than 160 games and having the DH in place are the 2010 Seattle Mariners. They only scored 513 runs that season, and that Seattle offense had a 236 team average. They had an on-base percentage of 298, and they slugged just 339. For the season, that Seattle team hit only 101 home runs with a 79 weighted runs created plus. This White Sox team is currently on pace to score 504 runs, which would set the new low. And the lowest total in White Sox franchise history, with the DH being implemented, is the 1976 squad, where they only scored 586 runs. Of course, the White Sox scored fewer runs in 2020 and 1981 because of shortened seasons. That 1976 squad, nobody hit more than 15 homers for the White Sox. Only Jim Spencer and Jorge Orta had more than 10 home runs in that season. And when looking at the White Sox lineup, their team weighted runs created plus is 74. That's dead last in Major League Baseball. That's 9 points below Miami for 29th in baseball. Their position player WAR is now negative 5.8. You already know that's the worst in baseball. The walk rate, shockingly, not the league's worst. They're at 6.8%. Their batting average, 219, not the worst in baseball. That's 29th in baseball. But they have the worst team on base percentage and the worst team slugging. Their on base percentage is 277, and their slugging is 344. This offense is really bad. And if they continue this pace, they're going to set a new record worst, not only in franchise history, but also in Major League Baseball history since the DH rule has been implemented. What I'm wondering about, because we are approaching this off season, is how in the world do you fix this? And how long is it going to take to fix this? So I looked at the largest increase in White Sox franchise history from one season to the next in weighted runs created plus. And we have seen recently a 19-point increase. And that was from the 2019 White Sox to the 2020 White Sox, in which the 2019 team had a weighted runs created plus of 92 up to 111 in 2020. If this White Sox franchise increases by 19 points next year, we're going to be looking at a 93 weighted runs created plus. And to James's point, not that long ago, a 65 win season is going to feel like sunshine and rainbows all season compared to what we have watched. What I'm wondering, guys, and James, I'll start with you. Is this too much of a hole for Chris Getz and Josh Barfield and the rest of the White Sox player development and front office to climb out of in a single off season to fix this offense to, I'm not going to say even average, because as I just mentioned, that would be the largest weighted runs created plus increase in franchise history. But respectability, mid 80s.
What's respectability in this context?
Let's say 85. Let's say they could increase their weighted runs created plus by 10 points next year.
Yeah. Why not? Have a free agency ad that's almost actually works, beyond Paul DeYoung. Have some non-career worst years, Luis Robert, like returning back to normal, not spending a bunch of time trying to get like Eloy Jimenez up and running, not committing like 150, 200 PAs to Martin Maldonado, seemingly at the end of his career. They're like getting to like good average is hard. Finding some of like the absolute like worst black holes that they threw at bats down to. I think that's a little bit easier to imagine a situation where they eliminate some of those, even if just by accident a little. I also think there's some effect of like a knock-on effect of like this offense like not going well. I want to like lionize like Andrew Vaughn and Gavin Sheets, but I think like it has a knock-on effect in terms of like knowing how hard it is to score runs, like has a larger negative effect on like the approaches. I don't think we're getting like the best swing decisions out of everybody. Like if it's cliche to pass on the idea of like, yeah, you got to just trust to pass the baton to the next guy. Like I don't think there's ever been an environment where it's less conducive to feeling like you can pass the baton to the next guy. It certainly doesn't seem like the way Luis Robert feels like he's operating up at the plate. I bet a bunch of other guys are feeling the same. We're also getting like, maybe he's not a major leaguer, but I don't think Miguel Vargas can hit any worse than this either. It's just somebody who it's an effect that's, spreading on anybody who walks in the door point. Like even Kevin Pillar apparently is like a 850 OPS true talent guy at this point who got sucked into the White Sox vortex. I do want to point out that you rattling off White Sox offensive statistics made me look up. I remember Dan Hayes, friend of the pod, doing a story about the 1981 Twins back in the day because they hit 47 home runs in the 1981 season. It was the strike season that only had 110 games, but it was still like the lead leaguer. The team leader on home runs had like 8, and I mostly wanted to look it up because it had the quote from Patrick Royce of the Twins Star Tribune, who said that team, they couldn't even take steroids well. I wonder what Rhapsodist old quote that this team will inspire years down the line.
How about you, Jim? Do you have any confidence they can get this fixed?
Well, I was looking it up for context, and like the White Sox last year had an 83 WRC plus. And what's the difference between that team and this team? It's like Luis Robert being all-star level, for at least part of a season or half a season. You have Andrew Vaughn being average. You have Eloy Jimenez providing league average DH production. And this team, everybody's just kind of short of average. So one star performance and a couple, average-ish guys, and then like, maybe some small sample successes like Jake Berger and such. if you can replicate that in 2024, like, or 2025, I should say, maybe like there's a chance, like if Robert goes off, it gets you a lot of the way there. So I think he's probably the key in just, being able to get an offense in better shape. Like, let's say, not that Vaughn's going to do it, or like Tim Elko, I don't think would be a great example of somebody who's going to hit the ground running if he gets called up. So yeah,
Edgar Carroll having like a 700 OPS would be like, incredible upgrade in catcher production.
Yeah, so like Edgar Carroll maybe stepping up, like, and Luis Robert having an all-star year if he's still around. Like, I could maybe see them getting to that level where it feels just ordinary kind of bad. I mean, the Marlins are in the same territory now, and that kind of feels what the White Sox could aspire to be the Marlins, which I think is pretty sad. But that's the situation the White Sox are in right now.
There's no White Sox hitter on the active roster with more than 50 plate appearances this season that has an OPS above 700. Luis Robert, leader in the clubhouse, 694. Andrew Vaughn at 690. Gavin Sheets at 689. If you go to Fangraphs, the leaders for the White Sox are the guys that got traded: Tommy Pham and Paul Dion, who supposedly is now playing elite defense at third, according to ESPN's Jeff Passan. Sure. But just like going down the list, like I know Andrew Benintendi's been hitting better as of late, but as of late has now carried his season OPS to 623. Corey Lee hits like a backup catcher. His OPS is 607. Brooks Baldwin, cup of coffee, just eclipsed over 100 plate appearances this season. His OPS is 588. Lenyn Sosa will now have over 250 plate appearances in 2024. His OPS is 550. Do not look at his fielding stats in Baseball Savant. For all the Lenyn Sosa supporters, it will destroy your support instantaneously. Do not look at it. I do not recommend it. And to Jim's point earlier, Dominic Fletcher, his OPS is 544. So in order for this White Sox team, and just for giggles, let me look at the Yankees leaders in OPS. I mean, Aaron Judge is almost at 1,200 OPS. Juan Soto's over 1,000 OPS. But for outside of those two, and Jazz Chisholm before he got hurt was raking for the Yankees. Nobody on the Yankees team has an OPS over 800. That is a lineup that is really carried by Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. Giancarlo Stanton above 700, Austin Wells above 700, Jose Trevino above 700. That's it. And it makes me wonder, like going to next season, so let's say Luis Robert can bounce back and Andrew Vaughn, sorry for the sigh, but I'm just losing more confidence in him to be able to put together a complete 162 game season. If Vaughn and Sheets, if they can have an OPS above 700, I don't think anyone on this team has the makings to have an OPS of more than 1,000. But I think a goal, and it sounds sad saying this, James, but in this offseason, and a combination of guys that you have to count on to either bounce back or progress next season, and guys that you want to add to this team, they need to find 5 or 6 hitters to be in their lineup that can post a OPS better than 700. That's how low the bar is now.
It owes to like when I got laid off last year and just watched like a ton of Sopranos that I thought you were going to say like nobody has the makings of a varsity athlete in the sitting group. But yeah, that's a lot of guys. It's more guys than I saw in Charlotte immediately able to help.
Right.
So it's more guys than I expect. I don't expect to like. They could superficially overhaul the offense in terms of like some combination of like 1-year free agents or like maybe one multi-year guy who they expect to pop. There's not as many like KBO offensive signing success stories. But I don't know. What's Vladimir Ballantyne up to? How's his off the field issues going? But yeah, I think it's hard. I mean, watching this season, just one guy who's consistently over over 100 OPS plus. Just two guys seems like it would be like a lot, or someone to make their lineup a threat on a nightly basis in a way where it's not just like 150% scouting energy on Luis Robert all the time. That would be great. I don't see them pouring a ton of money into it, at least not on a long-term basis. And I don't think, like, Tim Elko is statistically performing very well, but you understand the limitations there just in terms of like flexibility. Like you're just upgrading him over other first base DH types who can probably get you close to that 700 OPS level of production. It's a question of how much he's ready to like kind of give you over that right away. But Brian Ramos, Colson Montgomery, they both seem like guys like, let's hope they seem like they're a step more where they're at. Even Ramos playing better over the last month than they are right now by spring training, because right now you're not necessarily seeing them just kind of like nuke a level in a way that like makes you really excited about plugging him in their lineup right away. And even the last 5 years of White Sox baseball should have gotten us away from the idea of like, this guy's been good a little bit in AAA, throw him in, we can count on him to be a cog in our lineup right away. I think these guys are going to need a bit of runway. I think that's probably even true for Edgar Quero, who seen his ground ball rate trick up a little bit in AAA as well. Not that like, I still don't feel very optimistic for him hitting as a catcher. But the back injury, the youth that he has, you can't just count on him to be like a number 3 hitter next season. So I think it's a long road. That's what I'm trying to say. I think I'm supposed to land an optimistic take, but more I'm just seeing what it is and thinking it'll be wild. But as you said, the bullpen's fixed, so they just have to be elite pitching team next season, and then they'll win 80 games.
If you're looking at the KBO, Matt Davidson has 36 homers this year.
Bring him back.
Is he under 36 years of age?
Doesn't
33.
matter.
It's fresh. Plus
36 homers, 35 walks, 33 years of age.
Bring him back.
Zero mercy.
Yeah, when you were mentioning the Charlotte Knights stats, I just looked at the hitting stats for the Knights. And Colson Montgomery's OPS is below 700 with the Charlotte Knights, 692. So
more homers on the road than at home.
This is the area, like so much of this offseason, Chris Getz is going to have to start formulating some type of strategy with Josh Barfield and what they're going to have to do, because this is the biggest area of gain that they can at least start marching forward to being respectable, not being the worst team in baseball history. Do they get to 514 runs this season, guys? Jim, do you think the White Sox, you don't think they're going to get to 40 wins? Do you think they set the new low mark for DH era of baseball?
So they're at 300. So,
yeah.
So they need 116 runs over. So I'm trying to think what the average would be from here on out. So
if we have to think this long, the answer is probably no, right?
Yeah. I don't want to be making an informed decision. So
they got 34 games left.
So 3.4 runs per game sounds high. I'll say under.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they set I hope they score 500 runs this season. That'll just look weird. If they don't get to 500 runs this season, that's just going to look.
Yeah. They're averaging 3.1 runs per game. So to go up to 3.4 for the remainder of the season is a stretch.
They're going to need some big games. One area that I'm a little concerned about, we'll just update this real quick. The steak dinner bet update for those that have been following along. For those that are new to this, I made a steak dinner bet, usually do every season with my buddy Beef Loaf over from the 108, over under 818 and a half runs allowed this season. This was a hot topic before the season. The defense will be improved, but how long will Dylan Cease be with the White Sox? And it was close, but right now the White Sox are on pace to allow 831 runs this season. So I'm looking pretty. However, James, Jonathan Cannon, Davis Martin, the dart, he looks good. That changeup looks good. Garrett Crochet is allowed to throw 4 innings. Kai Bush is incredibly lucky. Am I at risk of losing this bet, James, because of these young pitchers?
I hope so.
You
Good
hope
luck
I'm going to lose this stake. I'm sorry. I'm kidding.
I have felt like being the, what's the word, conduit for a lot of unhappiness, both from the fans, from the players, from the coaches. I've had to talk to a lot of players in unfortunate moments where I'd rather just leave them alone. I think as far as like the spinning plates of dealing with people's unhappiness that this season has been, I think I can afford a little like you shelling out for a steak dinner in exchange for like, I don't know, Dominic Fletcher hitting 8 home runs in September. Wait, I'm talking about pitching. Jonathan Cannon throwing a complete game. Something to like pick up the spirits. Chris Flexen throwing 8 innings of 1-run ball and winning a game would be a godsend. The fact that we've done 19 downbeat post-game interviews with Chris Flexen in a row, and anything to get that guy off the schneid, 2 steak dinners would be worth it. I think it's possible. It'd be a great way for you, Justin Anderson enthusiasm, to come around and bite you in the ass. So, sure.
James, who's your least favorite pitcher? Who do you want to see wearing it? We can channel all the runs their way.
I've got a feeling I'm gonna be sweating this out all the way to the final series of this season. I think it's gonna be close. Again, I have
you set the over-under right. That's what you want, right?
We do.
You want there to be tension.
At one point, it was like they're only going to allow like 798 runs, and I thought, oh, I'm definitely going to lose this because look at Garrett Crochet, and then the White Sox started to mess with that, and the late inning meltdowns have helped me. It's going to be close, but right now, the White Sox are on pace to allow 831 runs, which is right around where they were last year, so they're not really making any progress in the run prevention side. And they're on pace to score only 504 runs. So for those out there, that is a minus 327 run differential the Chicago White Sox in 2024 are on pace on.
I want you to lose because I think when you first asked me about it, it was like in spring training, and we talked about like the projections for the White Sox to be like the 8th best defense, and I'd probably like talked to Brian Bannister for 45 minutes earlier that day, and just like, yeah, maybe they'll be a league average run prevention unit. And like, we immediately got responses of like, you absolute idiots, you're insane. 800 runs at a minimum. What are you talking about? So something that filters back towards, I'm pretty sure like I told WGN at the start of the season doing a segment like, who's your like sleeper player to watch, and I said Flexen. So yeah, some sort of turnaround I would appreciate for my sake, even at the cost of I don't know, canceling a vacation for you. I don't know what Beef Loaf's going to order as far as cleaning out the dessert menu, but I hope it's luxurious.
You know what, James, if I lose this bet, you could tag along. You could tag along to make you feel better for what you've had to endure this season.
Followed by a discussion of like, actually, the budget doesn't have room for a beat writer next season anymore. Those potatoes are rotten. I hope you enjoyed them because that tipped the scale.
Well, the Chicago White Sox are at home this weekend, and they're at home the next 10 days, 10 straight days of White Sox baseball. It starts against the Detroit Tigers. The Tigers are 62 and 66 this season. They're 4th place in the American League Central. They're 31 games ahead of the White Sox, but they're 11.5 games back of Cleveland and 9.5 games back of the wild card. So right now they are not a serious contender. They lost their last game. However, the Tigers have been playing better baseball as of late. They have won 7 of their last 10, and they lead the season series against the White Sox 5-1. So there's 7 games left to go. The last time the White Sox and Tigers played in Chicago was the opening day series in which the White Sox lost each game by 1 run, and the season, they just weren't able to recover. Maybe it'd be different if the White Sox started 3-0, alas. Your probable pitchers for this series, Friday night, 7:10 p.m. Central Time start. Kiter Montero will be taking the ball for the Tigers against Chris Flexen, who is trying to snap this losing streak. Saturday night, 6:10 p.m. Central Time, the Battle of the Southpaws. Tarek Skubal for the Tigers against Kai Bush for the White Sox. Sunday afternoon, 1:10 p.m. Central Time, to be announced for the Tigers, but Jonathan Cannon will take the ball for the White Sox. And again, this is one of the rare Friday to Monday 4-game series. Monday night, 7:10 p.m. Central Time, to be announced for the Tigers, but the Dart, Davis Martin, will get the ball for the White Sox. We are now in that stretch that we are within 45 days of service with this upcoming Sunday's game. And it has me wondering, James, like I've circled this weekend for the White Sox because for so many conversations before the season started, when could we see someone like Colson Montgomery call up or be called up? I had this weekend circled on the calendar because the White Sox do not want to lose rookie eligibility for Montgomery in 2025 to take advantage of the collective bargaining agreement and the perks of having a player perform well enough to start the season on the team as a rookie to gain that extra draft pick. I don't think we have to worry about Colson Montgomery being called up, but are you hearing anything about the White Sox calling up any position players with this upcoming weekend and being within this 45-day stretch of the season?
Not hearing anything specific. I think Caro's kind of back thing would take a little steam out of his possibility, both on how soon does he return and does it make you, they kind of tapered off his catching workload last season because they felt like he was tiring out to have this happen. And I already feel like, September is kind of an extra thing onto like a schedule he's ever played before. Him already being 21 and, conceivably see him starting in AAA next year. I think there's a lot of things that align for them not starting the clock sooner, especially how far away they are as an org and how important he kind of is to it. Unless they acquire Dalton Rushing in the winter.
Is Rushing a catcher for the Dodgers? Are they still sticking with him as a catcher?
Field, but I think that would be his value both for the Sox and on the market in general, that he stick at catcher. Just as the Dodgers had the guy that they signed to a 10-year extension that kind of complicates things. Elko is certainly hitting and at an age point where I think you don't necessarily worry about it, but are you willing to really unseat Sheets and Vaughn? It doesn't seem like Sizemore has really deviated from those two guys much. They kind of have a central role in the clubhouse as far as keeping things stable. I don't know if you want to unseat that for a guy that you may not see as necessarily a future cog. Ramos has been playing better, but he's not like lighting the world on fire. And you kind of have Vargas as, although hitting pretty much the worst he has as a professional, the guy you nominally want to kind of see play every day down the stretch. You hopefully would like to see him turn around or hit a fastball at some point in the final month. So there's not a lot of obvious options, even with Bolas. I mean, Dominic Fletcher in right field is kind of most interesting future looking thing you have going right now. And I've watched him, get into a couple balls. And when I was in Charlotte over the past week, and I also saw him overthrow the cutoff man like the days of old. So like it's very much like, yeah, that's Oscar, all right. So like they're not teaming with like kind of obvious candidates. Like the guy who's routinely like giving the most solid at bats down there is like Mark Payton. Like could do that again if you want. It's just it's not a clear like this is someone who offers a new dynamic to our current position group in a way that we seems obvious for them to embrace. I think probably the person who did that is Brooks Baldwin playing second base and kind of showing that, and they've kind of already done that. I think arms is probably where you can look and see like Trey Mago seems ready. Nick Nastrini is interesting. We want to try other guys out of the bullpen, like, the way Bannister has talked about down the stretch, more so that I can see like we're ready to really give this young guy a ton of at-bats. I mean, you got it between Corey Julks and Nick Senzel, you kind of have a couple of guys, and Chucky Robinson's not exactly making a ton of appearances. You kind of have some position players who are not really getting even regular at-bats, let alone like every day or frequent already in the group. You should be willing to switch things up, given this is the worst offense possibly of all time. But I just don't see. Colson is not figured out AAA. Colson Montgomery needs to play more AAA. I don't see the majors as that would be a very off the wall move. And I can't see anyone else similarly moving the needle.
I'm hoping, Jim, that we get a chance to talk to Jim Callis, our friend from MLB.com, because all the prospect rankings have been updated. A top 100 lists have been updated, and you see the White Sox making progress on that front. But the fact that James just went down the list, and James just recently saw these guys, Jim, is this a player development failure for the White Sox in 2024, that they just don't have anyone worthy to be called up in the last 45 days of the season?
Doesn't help. Yeah, I would say like Caro is not a player development. He's a player development success with the way he looks. Like he's, just the back is poorly timed. But if he were there and like fully physically capable, like he might be somebody who makes up for the lack of Montgomery. I think Ramos is somebody who's close enough to maybe have frustrating at-bats in Chicago. I think not maybe close enough to, dominate or have average production in Chicago. And I think Vargas is the more complicating factor there. So I think it's like a below average year, above average, I think, on the pitching front, below average on the position player front. And I think it's just I think Montgomery he loomed too large for the picture. I think that's what made me uncomfortable with, all of the projections for a quick turnaround for the White Sox, thinking like, well, all these conversations hinge so heavily on Colson Montgomery being good. Maybe not like even Corey Seager grade good and fulfilling, those comps, but just, above average, a centerpiece of the lineup, somebody who's playing, if not a premium defensive position, like one that counts towards defensive standings, like being a plus player in multiple regards. Like he was supposed to be that guy. And the fact that looks like he needs to go back to Charlotte next year, that does cloud the picture quite a bit. So I just wonder if it's just, the Montgomery being such a, stagnating to such a degree is what, casts a pall over everything. But I think it's been below average on the whole, especially on the position player side. Brooks Baldwin's surprising success doesn't make up for that. My one idea for September, now that Michael Kopech is gone, call up Mark Payton, give him number 34, print money.
It is bear season. I like the marketing strategy, Jim.
Is it? I can't tell by sports radio.
Not to make you guys any sadder about Colson Montgomery, but Montgomery in the last 30 days has played 20 games for the Knights, batting 167. His on-base percentage is higher than his slugging percentage. Not exactly finishing the season strong.
I started talking to him the other day. Like I was like, I'm gonna mess with him by throwing the biggest softball ever. And I was like, what are you most proud of this season? What are you most happy with development wise? And he pivoted all the way to the other side and said, like, I'm happy that I'm struggling. I know people don't want to hear it, but I'm glad I'm going through this. So the line from everybody, including him, is like, this will be good for him. He's eating his vegetables type of rationalization.
All right.
The art of self-defense. Just using your body weight against you and you're flipping on his back and kicking you over him.
Before we sign off, again, we will also be looking towards this offseason and who Chris Getz will be hiring to be the White Sox manager for the 2025 season and beyond, depending on how many years that is. The Seattle Mariners, though, they made a managerial change because the Mariners, who at one point were 10 games in first place of the American League West, have really sunk. And in the American League West now, they are 5 games back. They have fallen all the way to 500. They're 64-64. They have lost 8 of their last 10 games. And the Astros now have a very comfortable lead. The Houston Astros, at one point being 10 games back of first place in the American League West, may be the first team to clinch their division in the American League. That is just how rocky it's been for the Seattle Mariners. So Jerry Dipoto trying to save face, he fires manager Scott Servais. Scott Servais has been the Seattle Mariners manager since 2016. So it is 9 seasons. It's over 1,300 games managing. His managerial career with the Mariners may shock you. Seattle is 680 and 642. That's a 514 winning percentage, but they only made the postseason once in those 9 years, despite having 5 winning seasons and multiple 90-win seasons in 2021 and in 2022. 2022 is when they finally made it to the postseason and they lost 5 games to the wild card round. Jim, Scott Servais, he has lots of experience. Could he be an option for the White Sox managerial opening for next season?
Possibly. I wonder if the White Sox are a type of opportunity to where he might say, I'll wait a year. I'll take the year off and just regroup and it's been a grind and happy to take maybe do some media or something like that, or just camp out, find his next best opportunity and roll with it. I do think whenever I saw him in the dugout, he always struck me as like, yep, that's a manager. In terms of just former catcher, backup catcher, just he's around, he's doing an okay job. He hands up the lineup card. He occasionally calls for a challenge. It just struck me as more of a central casting manager of another team. Maybe not a movie manager, but just like the team, a team that the starring team in the movie plays. Like Scott Servais would manage them and just be like, yep, he's in the dugout. But I think if you're trying to like create a type of resume for getting the White Sox job, it would be that he's dealt with plenty of uncertainty. Like he manages a Jerry DiPoto team. They trade a bunch of players, very transactional, trade clubhouse favorites. They trade proven closers. DiPoto invites clubhouse mutinies because of the players sent away. And Servais has done a good job of keeping his job and, keeping the Mariners respectable, even when, no matter how many trades he pulls. So I think, that would be maybe my selling point for him would be if you want a guy who handles uncertainty well and gives young players a chance to earn lineup spots and is good at, integrating rookie pitchers who are on workloads, restrictions or managements. Like he has plenty of experience in that regard. So I would say, yeah, I would put him on the list if he was, interested in, going right back into it with a team that might end his career. I think that's the one thing you have to worry about taking this White Sox job. Like it's not a bad first job. It might be a bad second or third job.
Unless you're trying to redeem yourself, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's just a thought that I had because, again, Scott Servais and Seattle, they've been good since after COVID, since 2021, 90 and 72, 90 and 72, 88 and 74 last year. They finished in third. Of course, the Rangers ended up winning the World Series and the Astros, but fired after Seattle has fallen back to earth and at 64 and 64. They're going with Dan Wilson, who takes over for Scott Servais.
White Sox legend, right?
Yeah, Dan. Yeah, I was going to ask, didn't Dan Wilson play for the White Sox?
Or am I thinking of?
That's Ben Davis.
Ben Davis, that was it. Yep. I immediately said it. I thought, like, no, it was another disappointing or a highly touted catcher that didn't quite deliver on his promise. Dan Wilson, Arlington Heights. He's a local product, so he was born in the wrong decade for the White Sox to come calling.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, born in Arlington Heights, went to Barrington Community High School. Huh, did not know that about Dan Wilson.
One thing about the Mariners and Scott Servais is, like, we talked about AJ Hinch last episode, and AJ Hinch might have ended Servais's career because the Tigers won 5 of 6 against the Mariners this past month and blew the doors off in one game, 15-1 with Kirby starting. So yeah, perhaps Hinch is not the worst, and I'm prepared for him to make me eat my words this weekend, the wraparound series. So yeah, that's my. I have a feeling those words will age poorly. So let's get ready for that.
Well, we'll see on how this series goes. We'll still record a new podcast Sunday night to have it ready for you guys Monday morning, even though there's one game remaining between the White Sox and Tigers. But we'll recap the first 3 games of that series and look ahead, because after the Tigers series, the Texas Rangers come into town for Tuesday through Thursday. And then after the Rangers leave, you got the New York Mets coming in to the weekend before the White Sox head back on the road to Baltimore. So it's 13 straight days. No days off for the White Sox in the next 2 weeks that they'll be playing games. And we'll have James Fegan there for most of this upcoming homestand. It is going to be very hot at the stadium this weekend. Temperatures, again, could be in the low 90s in Chicago during this weekend. So we'll see if we'll get more offense, if the ball will jump for the White Sox. Maybe they won't get swept again. Hey, maybe they can surprise us and split the series against the Tigers. It's been a while since they even had a series split. Hopefully they do play better this weekend.
And then my AJ Hinch takes would be validated with the split.
Yes, they
would.
My
hands are clean.
Yes, your hands would be clean, Jim. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also listen and watch the podcast on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. Follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. Follow James Fegan at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. For full access of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox, including all the coverage from James Fegan at the ballpark as he'll be covering the games for us, sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine, where monthly plans start at $5. You get ad-free versions of both the podcast and the website. We also have different tiers of support where you can gain direct access to Jim and James through our Veterans Committee group chat. If you're interested in that, again, sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside James Fegan and Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
Drinking and driving is a decision that could change your whole world. Things will never be the same if you ever get a DUI. Because legal fees and time in court are just the beginning. Getting into a crash is another way that your world can be turned upside down. Your vehicle may not be the only thing that gets damaged in that crash. You can face a life-altering injury or even death, but you're not the only one that can face those consequences. Your decision to drink and drive can permanently impact not just your world, but someone else's world as well. Whether you injure them or leave their loved ones grieving. The next time you're out drinking, call a rideshare, a taxi, a sober friend, or a designated sober driver. The only decision that will change your world for the better is the decision to call for a sober ride. Drive sober or get pulled over. Paid for by NHTSA.